Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing as we have an area of strengthening rotation that is heading into Monroeville, Alabama here. This, you can see, is a strengthening rotation. Right now, it's located halfway between Old Salem and Mexia. That's a very strong area of storm relative inflow there in yellow. Definitely showing you the trend that storm relative inflow is increasing with time into this storm. All that flow is heading into that mesocyclone, that area of low pressure. Right now, this storm has a severe thunderstorm warning heading into Monroeville, but it definitely has that cyclonically curved pattern here in reflectivity. That mesocyclone is strengthening as it's approaching Monroeville, even though it is located to the southwest of the main surface low that is closer to this conglomeration of storms, southwest side of Montgomery. Slightly more favorable low-level shear right ahead of that surface low on the southwest side of Montgomery. But this storm approaching Monroeville probably has greater tornado potential of any storm in the entire country. It is as tight to that surface low as it can get and still have surface-based instability. Definitely has a tighter gradient here. Your forward flank gust front as well. That's this gradient. And it's relatively parallel to the storm motion as this is moving from west to east. So definitely is a favorable storm motion, favorable supercell structure as being indicated by reflectivity pattern to potentially produce a tornado. Right now, though, it does not have a tornado warning. It does have a severe thunderstorm warning right now. And if that mesocyclone tightens in the least bit, then I do think that a tornado warning is going to be issued. And you can see this rear flank downdraft get even more favorable. A little bit of inflow here, northeasterly inflow, northerly streaming in to this mesocyclone. And if this gets just a little bit tighter and we start to see that gate-to-gate wind shear with the storm as it's coming into Monroeville, then I do think that a tornado warning is going to get issued. It's very possible that that tornado warning is even getting typed up right now. And if you do live in Monroeville and you want to be safe, might as well just get in your safe place right now if you have one that's close because this rotation is increasing. I'm not seeing any evidence, at least right now, of a debris signature on this storm. But I am seeing this couplet get more compact. It's getting more robust. Appears to be intensifying as it's moving off to the due east. The storm motion is also parallel to that forward flank gradient, that forward flank gust front that we talk about, just to the north of Monroeville. That's your gradient in reflectivity. The tighter that gradient and the more parallel it is to the storm motion, which is off to the west and to the east, the more likely that a tornado could be produced by this storm. We also have an increased hail core with this storm as well. And we can look at some of these other products, some of the other dual pole products, a little differential reflectivity action. And you can start to see some drops in there, a little bit closer to zero. But really, your higher colors there will show you the presence of a potential hail core in there. That's not very, doesn't really give us any information right there. You can see the correlation drop, just a slight drop here where that main hail core is located. I would say that you could get hail maybe up to 1 inch in diameter southeast of Fountain within that zone to the north of Old Salem. Right on the back side there, it looks like that hail core has slid off to the east. And Monroeville, you're just south of that gradient. So it looks like that hail core is going to impact locations off to your north, like Renson, Peterman areas. That's where the biggest hail is going to fall. Could be in excess of 1 inch in diameter, especially with a rotating updraft like this. It also looks like this supercell is trying to peel off a little bit of a split. You can see that anticyclonic curvature on the northern side. Sometimes that could be the development of an updraft, a splitting updraft that'll then shoot off to the north. And then your right mover, your right split here will dominate, move off to the east-southeast, and cause even more problems. But in this case, it also looks like upstream, we may have a little bit of a cold pool trying to form. You can start to see a little bit of a bulge here in this linear configuration. That could be probably from that collapsing storm as these merge together and this one started to dominate. It's possible that that could sag off to the south and choke this storm off before it arrives to the Monroeville area. But boy, that rotation is increasing as it's coming into Monroeville. It's definitely a scary situation here, even though we are far away from the radar. Basically, this location is in a relative radar hole, but just during this live, that circulation has tightened quite dramatically. Look at it here. Your rear flank downdraft basically has become more robust. Your wind toward the radar site, some northeasterlies aloft. Just an improved overall health of that mesocyclone as it's coming into Monroeville. And that's going to be associated with an uptick in severe weather as well. Right now, that severe thunderstorm warning says hail up to 1 inch in diameter. And we do have that tornado possible tag that has been added by the National Weather Service. Could easily issue a tornado warning for this as it comes into Monroeville. But the tornado possible tag on a severe thunderstorm warning is also more than reasonable. But it does seem like this mesocyclone is intensifying as it's coming into Monroeville. The wind shear is marginally supportive of a tornado. Your 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative velocity is probably about 150 right now, maybe about 120 within this atmosphere, just on the back end of that surface low, which I believe is closer to this conglomerate of storms off to the north. A little bit more favorable low-level shear with these storms, but the wind shear is ejecting northeast of this area, and I think that this storm coming into Monroeville is going to get more skinny with time, similar to the storms back behind it. Notice how these storms are getting very skinny and strung out, a very elongated look to it, straight line hodograph type of a look, equal dominant, equal favorable conditions for your left mover as opposed to your right mover. Looks like my toilet is broken. But still it is thicker, and we were correct in assessing that this storm is about to split. So you've got this little left split that's going to be moving off to the north. So what happens is a supercell will split like this. When the wind shear isn't quite favorable for pure dominance of the right mover, then you'll start to get a little bit of rain in the middle of the updraft. It'll start to split two of those updrafts. But first of all, you start off with one updraft. And if you have any wind shear, imagine a horizontally rotating tube in the atmosphere as caused by wind shear. And then an updraft, like a little storm, moves over that horizontally rotating tube, stretches it into the vertical like a little loop that forms. And then you get two counter-rotating gyres, the left split that goes off to the north and the right split that wants to turn a little bit further right, propagating a bit off to the right. That is exactly what's happening here. You've got your left split, as your wind shear is also becoming more straight line. You've got your left split out here. You have an anticyclonically curved reflectivity gradient. And then you got your right mover right here with a cyclonically curved reflectivity gradient. So you've got a split that we are witnessing right here. It's pretty common in nature, more common than a tornado certainly. But you got your left split here and a right split. And when I was first storm chasing, or in the early part of my career, you could definitely tell when a storm chaser didn't know what they were doing, because we'd be approaching a storm and you'd get a couple of storm chasers that would chase after the left split, thinking that it had a chance of producing a tornado just because it has brighter colors on reflectivity. We would see right through that. We would shoot right through the left split and then position the about to intensify right mover and put ourselves in a better position of getting a tornado, certainly than if you're chasing a left mover rocketing off to the north. The left split supercell, though, can also have big hail. They can certainly have significant severe weather. And I do believe that there have been left split supercells that have produced tornadoes, likely anticyclonic tornadoes. But sometimes a left split can actually eventually become a supercell and split itself with a right mover peeling off of that. And then that right mover can actually become a tornado. And there was a pretty incredible evolution of that Greensburg Kansas Ef5 back in 2007 that started from the Ellis County supercell. That split. And then another right mover developed to the north. Those left splits hammered that storm. That one split again. And eventually the right mover, after a couple of mergers up there, eventually resulted in that Ef5 tornado that came into Greensburg. So this storm is splitting. Sometimes right after they split, they'll ramp up and start producing a tornado. You've got your left split moving off to the north. Axle could get some decent hail from that left split. But this is the right mover down here coming into Monroeville. Sometimes right after they split, their tornado potential can increase. And look at that mesocyclone strengthening on the southeast side of Monroeville right now. Even though we're using mobile radar or scanning relatively high up in the storm, you can certainly see the supercell dynamics playing out in this massive area of storm relative inflow that has trended up as they've been looping this. So it is possible that this narrow window still exists and that we could get a tornado out of this. And there is our tornado warning. Southeast side of Monroeville. You're seeing it here in real time. Let's see if we've got a TDS on this. Hopefully it didn't produce any debris as it was coming into town. I'm not seeing a debris signature with this storm in the southeast side of Monroeville there. So I don't think that this storm has a tornado on the ground. Quite certain, but boy, it looks like it's about to produce. That is a major mesocyclone there. Big time storm relative inflow into this. That's that area in yellow that we are watching. Very strong mesocyclone here. Echo tops rocketing as well. And boy, just south of Monroeville. Very tall echo tops. A pretty vertically oriented storm. This is a radar artifact of the inflow. So really you're watching this zone for potential development. It could happen at any scan. It could go from nothing to a full-blown deep tornado within individual scans. They can definitely ramp up in a matter of minutes. And it is moving east-southeast, so if anything has a chance of producing a tornado, it is this storm as it moves off to the east-southeast. Evergreen, keep an eye on this storm upstream. Does look like it's turning off to the right. Could be heading toward your location. Echo tops are immense on this. Reflectivity looks quite substantial. It just split, sent off that left split, and then your right mover turning off to the east-southeast. Brantley Crossing, get in your safe place. China, Farnelston, Burnt Corn. Everybody get in your shelter. Green Street, Fowler, Bowles, Brantley Crossing, even Evergreen way downstream. Keep an eye on this storm because it is moving east-southeast. It is heading in your general direction upstream. We've been watching this entire evolution of this storm play out live here on Team Dominator High Plains headquarters. This definitely is the most dangerous storm. It did go through that cell merger. This one is pretty tight to the surface low. Looks like possibly even an anticyclonic circulation here is being indicated by the left split as it's approaching Valley Estates, Renson area. That's the left split up there. The tornadic portion of the storm is out near Monroeville. It's headed toward Burnt Corn, Green Street. All of those locations certainly could get tornado potential. This is your hook-like appendage coming through Monroeville right now. Renegade storm. The environment's not incredibly supportive of tornadoes out here, but you can see this wedge of instability moving through roughly about like this area. And then you start to lose your instability to the northeast of that, where these basically a log jam of storms developing on the east side of that gradient. That's the storm we're watching right now. They finally issued the tornado warning as that storm passed to the east of Monroeville. But it certainly did ramp up on approach to town. Certainly could have dodged a very dangerous situation here in Monroeville. Hopefully there's not any damage in town. But I am about to take a look through Twitter and see if there is any damage in that location because we are still relatively far away from the radar. Can be difficult to see a tornado if it is happening. Typing in Monroeville here. Seeing the suits that are saying possible tornado over Monroeville just when the warning comes out, but you can look at some detailed tools with radar to see if there actually is a tornado. And I'm not seeing any confirmation right now. The circulation was ramping up on approach to Monroeville. I didn't see that big debris drop as it was going right over. We didn't see that debris getting lofted high up. But it does look like it's possible we had a cycle with a new circulation here, even though we are a little bit further away from the radar site. Possible that we could have a bit of a correlation drop out here, but I don't think so. Looks like more of a broad mesocyclone, bounded weak ecoregion, east-southeast of Monroeville. That's where the most dangerous portion of that storm would be. So it's possible that there could be something to the east of Monroeville right there. Possible tornado, still radar indicated. 349, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado over Monroeville. It's obviously east of there now. So if you are in downtown Monroeville, you can certainly come out of your safe place with this tornado potential well off to the east. Burnt corn, you want to be in your safe place, especially just to the south. But burnt corn anywhere in this tornado warning, Green Street, burnt corn, Fowler, all those locations you want to be in your safe place. Pretty dangerous storm, well-defined circulation coming in from the west. And you still have a pretty robust circulation further back down the line. Even though the wind shear goes down dramatically as you're going off to the west, you still have these supercell structures to the north of Mobile. Might be able to squeeze out maybe an isolated tornado with that one. But we are losing the window here for tornado potential. But this storm that's approaching burnt corn has a well-defined bounded weak ecoregion, even though it is relatively far away from the radar site. That's tight rotation. That's tight gate-to-gate rotation. Rural areas to the east of Monroeville, west-southwest of burnt corn, west-northwest of Brantley Crossing, and it is turning off to the right, moving more of an east-southeasterly direction. Big inflow into this storm as well. Just waiting to see if there's going to be a debris circulation. Look at that weak ecoregion right in the middle, just east of Monroeville. Geez, type in Monroeville on Twitter and all you see is just a bunch of radar grabs. So we are watching this dangerous storm heading up toward burnt corn. Looks like that bounded weak ecoregion is a little bit open on its southeastern side. There's our left split off to the north that we were also tracking near the Peterman area. Pretty big hail to the west of burnt corn as well in there. Let's see what this velocity image has done on the latest scan. Still very tight. Losing a little bit less of those velocities, those northeasterlies and northerlies on the north side of that circulation. But look at that, the latest scan, very tight circulation. Wouldn't be surprised if that's still nothing in terms of a debris signature. But we are far away, relatively far away from the radar site as well. Does look like a relatively mature storm, and it certainly is moving right. See how after it initiated that split, see how the right mover is starting to dominate? That's another way that you can tell that the wind shear is at least supportive of tornado potential, because this right mover is still dominating. Thought it was going to get strung out, but it is still just moving through this instability, carved out here. Evergreen probably needs to keep an eye on this just in case it continues to turn right and moves east-southeast toward town. basically the Interstate 65 corridor there. Evergreen, Georgiana, down to Evergreen needs to keep an eye on this storm. If you're heading south on 65 out of Montgomery, certainly need to keep an eye on this storm as well. Ooh, latest scan is not as tight. So this is good news for burnt corn and anywhere along I-65 north of Evergreen further to the east, is that this inflow zone has gotten a little bit decoupled now from your rear flank downdraft, or you could call this whole dark area here the rear flank downdraft. And when they're nice and tight gate to gate wise, with bright colors right next to other bright colors opposite in sign, that's when you really have to worry about that tornado potential. But it does look like they are just a little bit decoupled here, which is good news. But it is turning right, and it does have a very clean warm sector out in front of it. So no more storms that are going to develop to its immediate south that will interfere. Definitely the surface low is ejecting. This storm appears to be tight enough to that surface low to still have enough wind shear to develop a tornado potential. We have not seen any confirmed yet. Definitely not a tornado outbreak, Jason. Great question. We're probably going to have 0 tornadoes from this one. You need 6 or more tornadoes for it to be confirmed as a tornado outbreak. But if you live in burnt corn, it probably feels like a tornado outbreak to you. Good, seeing no damage in Monroeville. I bet they had an ominous wall cloud, though, that passed right over Monroeville. Yeah, a lot of times storms will do this. They'll bubble like this. They'll breathe in and out. They'll ramp up. They'll subside, ramp up, subside, ramp up. And they'll continue to bubble like that. But when you have perfect conditions for tornadoes, there's still that breathing in and out that happens when a tornado cycles, and then a new tornado ramps up. There's just this breathing in and out, this push-pull action that happens throughout nature and throughout meteorology. But you can see our original left split right here. That's the original left split. This is the dominant right mover down here. Burnt corn, you definitely want to be in your safe place. Even though it looks like the rotation is getting a little bit more broad with time, we're far enough away from the radar to where you don't want to get too hung up on scan-to-scan updates. But boy, does it look like it's gotten a little bit more broad. Your tornado would be southwest, just by about 3 or 4 miles west-southwest of burnt corn as of 4:04 Central Standard Time. But it is going to be moving east-southeast. It looks like it's going to pass halfway between burnt corn and Bermuda. Relatively broad, trying to see if this circulation is going to tighten up on approach to that interstate. Definitely the reflectivity is starting to ramp up with this right mover. The right mover cleared that left split. It's starting to increase its updraft strength a little bit. Definitely holding a lot more hail in that updraft as well. Let's see how the echo tops are progressing. That's not updated. We need another scan. Try a different radar. Definitely still is the most mature storm with that echo top. Obviously, a mesocyclone, when your updraft is rotating, it's a much stronger updraft, capable of penetrating higher up in the atmosphere. We're using a more distant radar site, so we're actually scanning higher up in the storm, starting to sample a lot more of that hail within this storm. That's the hail there in purple. You're definitely about to get hailed on. Burnt corn, Green Street areas, anywhere that's in the path of that purple zone could get some big hail. Scanning too high up into the storm to really see that one. And that circulation appears to be getting more broad with time, even though we are relatively far from the radar site. Notice how your forward flank gust front, though, is much less defined. You could see that whole evolution happen. The gradient was relatively tight. The inflow ramped up as well. And as that inflow ramped up, then the storm split. And then your right movers peeling off to the right. Echo tops will come down a little bit, and then they'll ramp back up as the right mover will intensify. But burnt corn, you're about to get some decent hail, it looks like. Pretty big hail moving in. The mesocyclone passing just to the south of burnt corn appears to be getting less organized with time. Still radar indicated. Maybe could get some hail up to an inch in diameter, maybe even larger than that, especially with that reflectivity starting to increase. Nobody really uses Ville anymore, do they? That one's not updated. Looks like it's not updated with the echo tops. Always look at the time on your radar, too. Notice how that's about 20 minutes later than the one we were looking at. Especially if you use apps that maybe don't automatically update as often. Let's take a look again at the photographs and see how the wind shear is evolving with time. autumnsky.us, great website to pick out wind shear based on VAD profile, basically looking at these real-time plotting of these photographs based on radar derived wind fields. So this is down near Mobile, and your 1 kilometer wind is becoming even more westerly. So down in southern Alabama into southern Mississippi, your wind shear is becoming less favorable with time. Also notice how your surface wind is southwest at about 10 knots. Your surface wind used to be due south. During our last live briefing, it was more of a due southerly direction. Surface wind, subtle shift to a westerly direction. Your 1 kilometer wind even more westerly. So your wind shear is decreasing with time in Mobile, down to close to about 100 0 to 1 kilometer shear. But let's take a look at Montgomery. Even though there are storms around, it's likely a little bit tainted. You're getting outflow near that radar site. It's not clean. Southeastern Alabama. Unfortunately, since we don't have a radar that is nice and tight to these storms, we're not getting a very representative look at what the inflow is. But notice how this photograph is a lot more curved here. Your values in the 0 to 1 kilometer layer closer to 200 at about 170 there, 0 to 1 kilometer shear. So this one's a lot more curved. Your 1 kilometer wind closer to due south. This is the direction that it's blowing. So south-southwesterly wind, southerly wind there. And notice how they turn over to due westerly in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. A lot more directional shear with this setup than we saw during those other setups, like December 10 and 11. The New Year's outbreaks, December 29, January 1st as well. Pretty good hail over burnt corn right now. And the mesocyclone is breathing a bit. It looks a little bit more diffuse right now. Not seeing any indication of any debris that's getting lofted by this storm either. And there you can see not much of a correlation drop at all with this storm. And then these ones back behind it should be dealing with weakening wind shear as we saw out of Mobile. We just looked at that photograph in Mobile. Your 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative felicity is dropping off. It's close to 100 now over far southern Alabama, which should not be supportive of tornadoes, even though these do look ominous with that hook-like shape, hook-like appendage on the backside. More than likely, they're not tightening up at the low levels. Just relatively weak mesocyclones that are being indicated there. Storm relative inflow is trying to increase again on this, but I think that this one is not. It looks like it's starting to have more of a downtrend. And still watching this area between Bermuda and Burnt Corn. Maybe you could tighten up your low levels again and develop a tornado northwest of Brantley Crossing. Watching that storm very closely. Other storms off to the west are not as favorable. This is definitely the healthiest supercell in the entire country. But that surface low is ejecting off to the northeast. The radar site we just used to assess the wind shear is out here north of Dothan. Also ahead of that lead convective line. But it's also in the stable air in southeastern Alabama. So that's why you have that more backed low-level jet there. That 1 kilometer wind, a lot more backed as well. And it does look like that storm relative inflow is trying to penetrate a little bit closer to that rear flank downdraft as it passed to the south of Burnt Corn. But I suspect that this tornado warning is going to be allowed to expire unless the subsequent radar scans ramp up that circulation. But there's your hail core. Right now, that circulation halfway between Brantley Crossing and Burnt Corn. If you're in China, Lylefen, all these areas, Lyfield, China, Fair Nelson. You definitely want to be in your safe place. Anywhere within this tornado warning, anywhere in the red box, you definitely do want to be in your safe place. But I am watching for the evidence of any debris within these storms. These ones off to the west should just die out. The wind shear is decreasing with time, even though this supercell looks like it's wrapping all the way around. The wind shear definitely gets less favorable with time, and you have a relatively weak couplet, even though you do have that rain that is wrapping all the way around that circulation. This is our lone tornado warning, and the latest scan, it's ramping up again. Ramping up again. Southeast of Burnt Corn. If you're in Brantley Crossing, you want to be in your safe place. Looks like that tornado is going to pass just to your north, but it's too close for comfort. China, Alabama, here in the path of this storm, does appear that this thing is starting to ramp up again. It does have a lot of instability out ahead of it and weakening wind shear with time. So if it hasn't produced a tornado yet, something's going to have to change out ahead of this storm to make that environment more conducive for tornado potential. I'm not sure what that's going to be. Maybe it's an anvil shadow. Maybe we can look at a surface map to assess just how much these winds are veering with time out ahead of this storm. So here is the surface map. And wow, when you look at that, this is central and southern Alabama. You can definitely see your stable air dominating the I-20 corridor. Temperatures drop into the low 60s to near 60. Your upper 60s are definitely into southern Alabama, but then they die out. Look at that. But you do have a bit of a surge of those dew points, mid and upper 60s into south central Alabama, trying to surge up to that storm, but your surface low is starting to overrun the instability axis. You're definitely getting these northerlies there in Montgomery. That's why that VAD profile, that hodograph, is definitely showing those northerlies. Down near Dothan, more of a clean, warm sector. But then in southeastern Alabama, your dew points drop into the low 60s. So as this low-level jet axis pushes off to the east, will we get some of this deeper moisture moving into southeastern Alabama, through the Florida Panhandle, into southwestern Georgia with time? But that's your instability axis, and this storm is getting closer and closer to outrunning it. It's in south central Alabama right now. And some of the good news that I have just on the wire is we did lose that tornado warning. They dropped it. National Weather Service now just has a severe thunderstorm warning that includes the I-65 corridor, north of Evergreen, south of Georgiana. Moving off to the east, but it is losing steam. Looks like that rotation is starting to decrease, and it's ramping back up again. So that happens a lot as these storms will bubble. They'll breathe in and breathe out. They'll ramp back up, might have a tornado warning. They'll ramp back down. Tornado warning will be allowed to expire. Breathe back in, ramp back up. Tornado warning reissued. That is just something that happens in the atmosphere, and especially when you're dealing with severe weather and supercell storms like this. But if you're on I-65 heading south out of Montgomery, and you're quite a ways south of Montgomery, south of Greenville especially, then you may want to pull over and let this convective line move through. Stay tuned to those watches and warnings because there could be some dangerous severe weather to the south of Greenville away, south of the Georgiana exit, near Mount Olive along I-65, Lifeon, Bowles, China. Probably can get out of your safe place. If you want to play it safe, hang in there another 20 minutes because there is a mesocyclone still approaching your town, even though that mesocyclone appears to be weakening quite dramatically. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this live radar breakdown. I'm going to keep an eye on this, but I think that the narrow window for tornado potential is starting to close as that surface low is moving off to the east-southeast, but certainly stay tuned to those watches and those warnings. No tornado reports today. Last night into the early morning hours, there was a damaging tornado out near in Sabine Parish in southwestern Louisiana. Definitely destroyed some structures there. HP supercells moving from the Texas piney woods up into central Louisiana. But so far today, since this event, this phase of the event has started, we have not had any official tornadoes. But there is this new tornado warning now further northeast with that other convective line. Oh, you got to be kidding me. Little supercell here to the north of Petrie. There it is. And this is what inside this lead convective band. But out near Troy, your dew points drop into the low 60s just ahead of this band. Just to the west of it, they rise into the upper 60s. But anywhere along into the east of this band, you really start to lose that instability. So you're definitely going to need some more storm scale processes like this one, maybe some rainfall around it, some stratiform rain all around the main circulation. But you do have more favorable wind shear out here, as we saw from this radar site. We just looked at the shear profile out of the radar site to the northwest of Dothan. And it's possible it's getting a little bit of clean inflow right at the nose of that instability to the west of this little cell, but definitely storm interaction is going to be even more substantial with this storm to the west of Petrie. Not seeing anything in the way of a correlation drop with this storm right now, west-northwest of Petrie, but this is a new tornado warning. Just came over the wire. You've got your cyclonically curved hook-like appendage on the backside of that. Need to get some bright lights in here. So there's that circulation. Not very much in the way of storm relative inflow in the red, but you do have that rotation located northwest of Petrie, south of Bradleyton. That's where a tornado would be, and it is moving off to the east. We can watch this ramp up just in a couple of scans. Notice how, again, though, that storm relative inflow increased first, then the couplet tightened up, and now it's starting to peter out. So that's often the evolution that these storms will go in. Storm relative inflow ramps up, tighten up the couplet, the area of rotation, and then poof, it'll then die out. So I imagine that that tornado warning is also going to be allowed to expire. We can certainly see it in the echotops as well, how high this storm is penetrating in the atmosphere. If a storm is rotating, its echotop is usually higher because when a storm is rotating, the updraft is stronger and it's able to penetrate higher up into the atmosphere. And we now have a special weather statement that has been issued upstream. Probably a sign to come at this storm. That tornado warning is also going to be allowed to expire. But that's the new surface low. The surface low is propagating up this confluence line. And then this lead confluence line tried to mature, but you could tell by the abundance of stratiform rain located downstream of it, off to the east of that tornado warning, that that is likely stable air. And we confirmed it with that surface map with those dew points dropping into the low 60s out there. Southeastern Alabama. When you're doing these weather reports like this, you don't want to use statements like out there. You want to always say southeastern Alabama or western Georgia or definitely define the geography. Looks like some gravity waves that are evident within this little RFD structure. You can see a couple of reflectivity pops there evident within those pixels, likely as that mesocyclone has died a little bit. This RFD is losing steam. It's not advancing in a storm relative sense as much, and it'll just kind of sit there and get that little wavy appearance. Sometimes, though, they'll get that wavy appearance as they're advancing and marching into that inflow, that low-level jet, and sometimes that can be a telltale sign that a tornado is about to happen when you get those gravity waves up and down and advancing rear flank downdraft that's just pumping into that low-level jet. Sometimes that can also be a telltale sign that a tornado may be about to happen. And then with our dying storm, they like to get this S shape also, almost like how that rear flank downdraft gets those little waves in it as it's starting to subside. Similarly, with this supercell that's losing strength, you kind of get this weird little S shape as well. Pretty interesting. So that is the update. I'm going to continue to monitor this event, but I think that I'm almost certain that it peaked. You always have to throw in the almost in there with meteorology because so many times we see crazy things that happen where you don't expect a tornado and one happens, or you expect a tornado and one doesn't happen. One thing I've learned in this line of work for over 25 years is to learn to expect the unexpected. And it looks like this thing is dying to the north of Petrie. Probably not going to have that tornado warning extended off to the east. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into my weather report. I am going to do a live Q&A for Facebook supporters only tomorrow night. We'll do that at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll try to stick to relative consistency with these times, but we'll do 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. That's when we're going to be doing our live Q&A. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this. I'll go live again if we do have some more tornado warnings or more tornado potential or something happens that I don't expect. But thank you for tuning in to this live radar breakdown. Never stop chasing.